There's a virtual option for this workshop?
No, so I'm using Zoom to record it so that you all can like view it afterwards, or someone who missed it who wants to see the content.
You already signed up.
All right, hi everyone. How's it all going? Saw some smiles. Okay, I'll take it. So hi, my name is Sean. I'm the digital lounge coordinator here, and over the next 3 weeks, I'll be walking you through the basics of Figma, which is a UI UX design tool. We'll primarily focus on Figma itself, but I'll try to throw in some UI UX design like tips and like best practices throughout the process. Hello. So the nice thing about Figma is that you actually, as students, get access to an educational license, so you can get some of the cooler features for free as a student. And so I'm going to show you how to set up your education account through Figma first, just so you can see all those cool features. So open whatever browser you want to open. I'm going to use Safari because I'm not signed into Figma with it. And if you just go to figma.com, this is their home screen. And to get to where you can get this educational license, you'll have to click this pricing tab up here. And then under the Figma professional card, there is this kind of hidden link that says free for students and educators. We're going to want to click that. And then it brings you to another screen. I don't know why there's so many steps to do this, but you'll click this Get Verified button right here. And then it'll take you to where you can log in if you've already created a Figma account, but if you haven't, this bottom link where it says create one by no account ? Is where we'll go. And then use your USC email in the email field, just because it makes that educational status verification process a bit quicker. And then you can set whatever password you want, and then click create account. And now I did this like a couple months ago, so I forgot if there's any additional screens or steps that show up, but you should get a email from Figma saying verify your email address, and then it'll say you've been verified for an educational Figma plan. I'll give a couple minutes so that process can finish, and let me know if you're stuck at any point. Mhm.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So if you go to figma.com in your browser, you'll want to click this pricing tab up here. And then under Figma Professional, there's this link that says free for students and educators. We'll want to click that. And then you'll want to click this Get Verified button. And then under No Account, you'll click Create One. And then use your USD email and then whatever password you want. Hello. All right, everything going smoothly so far? Yeah, okay, cool. I'll go through it again for you.
Class,
right.
login was
Yes, if you go to figma.com and you'll click this pricing tab right here.
in, pricing.
Yes. And then under Figma Professional, there'll be a link that says free for students and educators. You just get like a better version of Figma as a student. And then you'll click the Get Verified button. And then where it says no account at the bottom and then create one in blue, you'll click create one and then use your USC email and set a password.
I don't see where it says.
Yeah, let me take a look.
Um, which one?
The upgrade.
Oh. It says my email is already taken. Maybe I have some.
Maybe you did. We can walk through the process. You can use your account that you created already. All the stuff that we're doing today, you should be able to do with the starter plan. All right. So now I'm going to open up Figma in Chrome where I've already signed in. So this is what Figma looks like when you have logged in. You might see that I have more files and stuff. But as you create things, they'll populate here. First, I just want to walk you through what you're seeing. It looks a little different than some other programs that you might use. You should see the Figma icon and your name in the top left. And then when you click on it, there'll be an option to switch to the Figma community. This is a place that we'll kind of explore more in the last workshop session, but this is where you can find other things that people have published that you can create copies of and use their designs and their assets in your own, or you can publish your own if you want to do that as well. There's your normal search bar. When you have a bunch of files or people or teams or anything, you can search for them instead of having to scroll. You can also get to the community by clicking Explore Community over here. If you get any notifications, they'll be in the bell icon. I don't think I've gotten any. And then If you click your initial over here, you'll see different settings, where to change things about your profile. If you want to add plugins, which we'll go through in a little bit too, change different settings. And then there's this Get Desktop app. If you anticipate wanting to work with Figma and you're not going to have access to the internet, you'll want to download the desktop app because that can be used without an internet connection. And then your normal log out or add account if you work for multiple different companies that have different accounts or something like that. Then in this left side, there's a bunch of things. There's recents and drafts. There's not a ton of difference between them. Recents will also just show things when you've prototyped something and you click play to like click through it. You'll see that I have one right here. This is actually my test thing for what we were going to build in this series, and it just saves it to my recents. But drafts doesn't have that. This is just all the design files. And then there is this favorite file section. If you click on star for any of the files that you have, it just gets saved over here for easier access. And teams is for when you're going to work at a company that uses Figma. You might have a design team and then different projects in it. It allows you to have multiple people working together collaboratively. I'm the only one who uses Figma in the digital lounge, so I don't use the teams. Then we have these buttons to start new files. You click new design file, which we'll do in a little bit, to create our file. There's also this thing called FigJam. I haven't used it, but it's for if you want to like kind of sketch out some designs, if you want to whiteboard anything, put some diagrams together. And then you can also import files from other software if you want to edit your design in Figma instead. You got some normal filter options over here. If you want to just see your design files or your prototypes or something, you can click this filter. You can also sort your files how you're seeing them like normal. And then these buttons let you toggle if you want to see them as cards or as list items. And then all of these files here, your typical thing, you see the file, you want to double click it to open it. You click star to save it, stuff like that. Any questions on the interface before we start? Yeah. I prefer using the browser version. The app version, I do have it downloaded, but it will take up like storage space as well. But yeah, so I only really use that if I don't think I'm going to have internet connection. And then when I do, it resyncs between the two. Cool. So we're going to get started with the file. And today we're going to build what's called a wireframe. Does anyone know what a wireframe is? Yeah, basically it's a bunch of squares and lines and stuff. They don't look very pretty, but they allow you to see the content and the structure of a design before you start adding colors and different fonts and kind of confusing it. Generally in like the design process, you would build a wireframe first and then show different stakeholders like your manager or developers to make sure that everyone is on board with that before you start adding all that fun stuff. So we're going to create our new file. You just got to click new design file. And then it opens up a new file for you. And this is where you're going to be creating all of your content. Hello. So this top part is our toolbar. You see it in most applications. Some things are going to be a little bit different. This Figma icon has all of your standard, file, edit, object, kind of menus that you see. You can also see the things like plugins and widgets and stuff. Just a menu to access most things. And then these are all of those tools that you're going to use to actually create your content. This one automatically selected is the move tool. But if you click on the arrow, you can see that they're nesting tools. So if you can't find a tool, it might be underneath a different one. This scale one is if you create a rectangle, but you want it to be, 1.5 times the size, have it scale proportionally to itself, instead of having to try to manually guess on how that is happening. Then here, there's the frame tool. The frame is the basis of Figma. If you use like Illustrator and you're used to artboards, a frame is essentially an artboard. With Photoshop, it would be like your canvas or something. Section and slice, I don't really use. I'm sure there's a purpose for them. Under the rectangle, there's all of your shapes. So there's rectangles, lines, arrows, ellipse, which is a circle, polygon. So if you wanted to create a triangle or a pentagon, or add all the numbers up to whatever you want. And then there's a star, and then there's a place image and video. A note about this education account, it does not allow you to place video. Video is only allowed for ones when you're paying for a pro thing. I think it's a little sad, but we'll live with it. Then we got our pen tool. If you want to create shapes like freeform, the pen, just to illustrate it, it goes in straight lines. And then I'm just going to delete that. If you switch to the pencil, you can kind of do more freeform stuff. This T is for if you want to add text. And then this kind of fun for icons has some cool things about Figma that I think make it sometimes easier to use than some of the Adobe apps that you also have to learn in Annenberg. Components we'll do more with next week, but components are, you can create an element like a button or a card or an image or something, and then create variants of that so that it's reusable across different designs, different screens, so you don't have to keep recreating. And then they're all linked as well. So instead of just copying and pasting everything, and then you have to edit everything individually if you decide to change your mind on something, you can edit the master component and it'll push all of those changes to all those other instances that you created. Plugins are going to add additional functionality to Figma. Next week, we'll also install some. We're going to install Iconify, which has a bunch of icons already designed that you can just drag and drop into your design, so you don't have to create every icon. And then Unsplash allows you to find like free photos that you can use, so that you don't have to worry about taking pictures of everything or worrying about copyright licenses. Widgets are something that's more used in the Teams collaborative space as well. They're similar to components, but they're a little bit more interactive, and they stay consistent between different team members when they're viewing the file. Then this is the pan tool. So this allows you to move, it's a little hard to see right now, but when you have it activated, it allows you to move the canvas around, where this you're like selecting. A quick fun thing with this pan tool, if you don't have it selected and you hold down the space bar, it's going to automatically bring it up, and then you can just click and drag. So you don't have to remember to keep going back to that icon.
What's the shortcut?
Hold down space bar, and then you click and drag. And then this last one is for comments. So if you're going to be working with multiple people and I want to say this, rectangle is bad, change it, I can do that. Over here, you see my initial up here as well. If you're working with multiple people in one design file, they're all going to pop up here. And then when you click on them, it'll take you to where they are in the file. So you can see what they're looking at, what they're doing. Sharing is if you want to share your file with people. This plus icon we'll play with during the last workshop when we actually make a prototype. And this is how you view that prototype, and you can play through and click the different screens, and it's pretty cool. Over here on the left, we have layers, assets, and pages. Layers is going to be every frame, every shape, every image, everything you create is going to be a layer. Assets, when I talked about those components before, if you create one, this is where they're going to live so that you can drag and drop them into other parts of your design. And then pages is just a way to organize your content. People have different ways of organizing. I use pages more for the different parts of my design. So we're going to create one that's wireframe. We're going to create one that's a mock-up. We're going to create a prototype page. I've seen it also where people use different pages for different screen sizes. So you could have, the iPhone app. This is my, mobile like desktop version or something. This is my Apple Watch version if you want to design for Apple Watches. This middle part is your canvas. This is where you actually do all the fun stuff, and we'll get to that pretty soon. And then there's 3 tabs over here. There's design, prototype, and inspect. Design is going to have all of the settings, and they're going to change based on the type of content that you have selected. So if I have a frame, it's going to show me certain design settings, but if I change it to, selecting an image or a rectangle, they're going to have different settings that I could alter. Prototype we'll play with the most in the last section. This is where we make our designs interactive and how you have it where you click a button and then it takes you to a different screen. This is where you can create a delay so it looks like it's a loading screen and it finally loaded after 2 seconds or something like that. And then inspect allows you to open up your design in that FigJam whiteboarding thing if you want to do that. But it'll also show you some CSS code. So if you wanted to, see, it's not going to show you every piece of the code, but it'll show you some so that you can make sure that when you actually are developing it in somewhere that you have the specific things. Any questions before we start actually making content? Okay, I will take that as a no. So we're going to start with the frame. So that is this icon right here. You can also access it by clicking on the F key on your keyboard, and that'll quickly shift you to the frame. Now you can do a drag and drop, and then it creates a custom size frame. But if you also noticed when I had it selected, the design being populated with some settings, and these all have presets. So it has the screen sizes for all of these different things already baked in. So if I know I'm going to be designing for an iPhone 14 Pro, I can click it and it's going to automatically populate the correct screen size for me. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use iPhone 14 Pro throughout this. Feel free if you want to chart your own path and try to create something on your own during this, feel free to. All right. So now you notice it popped up over on my layers panel as a layer, and that's also in my canvas. I'm going to rename it because I like to name things so it's easier for me and other people viewing the design to know what it is. You can either rename it by double clicking on the name in the canvas or by double clicking within the name and the layers. And I'm going to do this one as a loading screen. Okay. And then before we start actually creating content and placing it on it, I like to have some sort of a grid or a guideline so that I know that throughout my design, it's going to be kind of standard things, so I'm not placing things everywhere. And that is over here in this layout grid setting under design. So if you click plus, it's going to automatically give you a 10 pixel grid that's red. I don't really like the actual grids. We'll change it. But right here, you'll see that there's 3 things that you can do. This will open up some more settings, which we'll do in a minute. This eye icon toggles it on and off. So it doesn't remove it, but you can, if you're sick of seeing the red grid when you're designing and you just want to see how it looks, you can toggle it off. And then the minus icon actually fully removes it. If you go back to the settings using this 9-dot menu, and then you click grid, you'll get options for columns and rows as well. We're going to do columns. In web design, which we're going to do like a mobile app, but in web design, I generally do both columns and rows. For rows, it's like about 12. Anything that's like the most divisible, so it's divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6, makes it really easy to create different layouts where there's 3 pictures, or there's 2, or there's 4. With mobile, like 4 columns is pretty standard. So you can change that in this count. You can either click here and see options, or you can type it in. Here you can change the color. So right now, you see the, all the different colors. You can change the hue right here. And then this is the opacity. So basically how, opaque or transparent it is. And then this icon right here is a color picker. So if you already have a color in your design and you want to change the color to that, you just click that and you can hover over and click. It's not going to show anything right now because this isn't, a grid is not actual content. And then you can also change, if you know like the specific numbers, you can change the hex code, the RGB code, and this is the transparency percentage. And then you'll also see this section that's document colors. Once we add more colors to things, there's going to be a lot of colors popping up in here. It's just any color that's in your document. But I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to change this back to 10, how it was.
I didn't find the buttons. Can you go over that really quick?
Yeah, so you want to add a layout grid. Click plus, and then there's this 9-dot menu right by it. And then where it says grid, if you click it, you can change it to columns. You're welcome. Now there's some other settings for columns. This is stretch, which is basically your 4 columns are going to span the width of your frame. And it automatically will have auto for width because you can't select a width that's not your frame width. But if you want to have them on the right or the left, it'll give you options for how big you want each column to be. But we'll kick them, or we'll stick with stretch. And then I'm going to add a 16 pixel margin here. So margin is going to be the space from the leftmost column to the left side of your screen and the rightmost column to the right side of the screen. It's best to have some sort of a margin. Otherwise, when you're looking at content and you're placing it all to the side, something could get cut off in different screens. It might look a little funny. So usually a margin of something is pretty good. 16 is pretty standard for mobile design. And then gutter is the space in between each column. And I'm also going to set that to 16 just to be standard. All right. So we're going to use this column setup for every single frame that we do, every screen that we do. And Figma does this, personally, I find it amazing, thing called a style that allows you to quickly add the same settings to different elements and different frames as you're designing. So if you click this 4 square menu by where we added a grid, it'll open up the grid styles. And I don't have any created yet, but we can create one with a plus. And then there's name and description, and then you can see more options. The more options shows you the properties that you've already put in. But if you want to change them, you can do that. I generally don't use the description field because I like to have pretty descript names, just so I can see it and click it. Someone else can see it. They know what it is, not having to read multiple things. So I'm going to name this 4-column, 16 pixel margin and gutter. And then you can click create style. And you'll notice it gets rid of that layout grid kind of space, and it just has that style right here. Again, you can turn it on or off. You can also unlink it. So if you applied something, or if you, I'll show you how to do this part in a bit, but if you duplicate it, it's going to automatically apply that same style. But if I want something different for whatever reason, I'll click that unlink button.
Somehow I lost all the panels here. I really can't move on. From
So you need to create a frame. So if you click F on your keyboard and then you put a frame, you'll see them again. Yeah.
How do I save this one? I don't have the. Like, where do I save this?
What do you mean save?
Like, like the setting, like that setting.
Yeah, so if you have it applied to your
Mhm.
frame like this,
Yeah.
you click this 4 square menu right here, and then you can click plus, and then name your new style.
Okay.
And the nice thing with Figma is they have grid styles, but it also has text styles, it has color styles, so that we'll play more with those next week, but there's a bunch of different things so that you can quickly add new content. Any other questions before we keep playing around? Cool. So wireframes, as we talked about, are very what are called low fidelity representations of stuff. Instead of putting actual images in, we put a rectangle with an X through it. Instead of putting all of the body text, we would use either the like lorem ipsum Latin text that's put in, or if you don't know what's going to be in there, some people just put rectangles. We'll do both. Videos are the same thing as an image, but has a play button in the middle, just stuff like that. Again, it's only for seeing what the content is going to appear like, seeing the structure. And then next week, we'll do the actual fun stuff of putting images and colors and stuff. So we're going to start off. I want my loading screen to have a background image and then the logo. We're going to be doing like a coffee shop app throughout this 3 weeks. And so I want the background image, and then I want that coffee shop logo in the center. So I'm going to create a rectangle. And then I'm just going to place it in this frame. You'll notice that as it's out of the frame in this layers panel, it doesn't appear under it. But when I move it into the frame, it places it under there. So it's nested within that. I'm just going to center it. You'll see these guidelines appear. And I'm just going to make sure that it spans the entire frame. And then because I want to like show, yes.
Sorry, wait, how do you create their slide?
Yeah, so it's this square icon up here, or if you press R on your keyboard. Yeah.
The popular voting screen and change the shape of the voting screen.
Let me take a look. No, you're welcome. All right, and it's like industry standard. If you're going to do an image, it's a rectangle, whatever size it's going to be, and then you have 2 diagonal lines going through it. So to create that, we're going to use the pen tool. So it's this icon or the P button on your keyboard. And then it's simple. You click in one corner of the rectangle and you just drag it to the other corner.
So does the rectangle the same as the wireframe, like the same size?
Yes, that's just the design that we're doing. You can do whatever size you want. And then I'm just going to click done so that it's one line, but I'm going to do the same on the other side. So the pen tool, click in the corner and click in the opposite corner and then click done. So now for
Done,
Mhm.
the line is. How do I change the color of the line? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that later. The line is gonna, the colors in a wireframe don't fully matter. Yeah, what's that?
When I click done, the line is.
Oh, great. Let me take a look. I don't know. Look at the potential, don't drag your mouse.
Yeah, my lines do keep disappearing. I only have one.
Move your mouse without dragging or doing anything. Click again. And then click. Seems like the pen tool is a little finicky. But you'll notice the second line came up here outside of my frame. I'm just going to move it down in. So you can click and drag a frame or a layer and move it to wherever you want it to be to organize things. And then I don't want to kind of mess with this too much anymore. You know, I don't want to accidentally move my rectangle, accidentally move my my lines. So if you select everything, so use the select tool, and then you can go up here to, where is it? Object. So this Figma icon, object, you can click group selection. That'll make it all put together. It doesn't finalize that though. So on this layer, you can click down and you could select the individual elements still. So they're not, you know, grouped forever without any further customization. And I'm just going to do that same thing of renaming, double clicking in here and naming the group something like image, just so I know what it is.
Wouldn't that, well, I lost all of them after I did it. Yeah, but I lost like everything.
So if you put this right there. Perfect. So it looks like you're grouped with the frame.
Mhm.
So just so you know, when you do that, make it.
I'll wait and do something.
Yeah. And then if you,
No, it's not.
yeah, so just select use.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I couldn't like, so, I created group one, but I was only able to put the two lines under that, but not the rest.
Let me take a look. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, so here,
So if you click here.
Okay.
Yes, you can drag the lines. And then range it.
oh, okay, cool. Group is under file group, right?
Yes. The shortcut for group is Command G. If you want to not have to go file, object, group selection. Yeah, so there is, if you click, so if you click this question icon down here, there's a keyboard shortcuts, and I'll have this whole menu of stuff. All right, so now I want to add a space for my logo. Generally, if you're designing for a brand, you already kind of know what the logo looks like or something. We're going to use like a circular logo for this. So I'm going to click here, this arrow by the rectangle tool, and then there's ellipse. You can also press O on your keyboard. You'll see those in the menu. You see all these keyboard shortcuts too. And then you can click and drag, and it's gonna give you some funny shapes as you're creating it. But if you click Shift or hold it, it's gonna make it a perfect circle. All right. Fun note, when you click Shift and you release it, it automatically will link your width and your height. So if I were to go over here to the settings and change the height to 250 pixels, it's automatically going to change my width too. If you don't want it to be linked, you just click that unlink button. And then for kind of like icons or logos with a wireframe element, we just want to, there's no indication of what this circle stands for. So you'll click the type tool, and then I'm just going to literally type logo in it just so you can see it. It'll be the type tool, the T. And then if you want it to look like a little prettier and like more organized, you can highlight both. And then over here, this icon, the second one that has like 2 lines with the line through it vertically, will align them on the vertical axis, so up and down. And then this one that has the same thing but kind of rotated, we'll do it on the horizontal. So clicking both of those, make sure that my logo text is centered within my circle. And then I'm just going to Command G again to group it and just label it logo. And then you can click and drag to move it into your frame. It's going to look funny because there's no differentiation of the colors. The fill color is the same, but we'll change that quickly so that we can just see the circle. But as you're moving it around, you'll see that there's these like orangish, reddish guidelines. You can see those when it's perfectly line centered. Or you could do the same thing where place it anywhere and then click those align vertical and horizontal. Command Z. And then if I open up my group in this left side, my logo, and I click on the ellipse, I'm just going to edit the color. So that'll be under this fill. And then you can click on the gray square. I'll open up a color picker. I try to keep things pretty grayscale for wireframes, just so things aren't confusing and I'm not misrepresenting like brand colors or anything like that. But just so that I can see it, I'm just going to click and drag this to make it darker.
How do you move the circle, but then make the logos
Group it. So if you highlight both the circle and your logo text, and then you either file object group selection or Command G, it'll group it. All right, we got one screen of an app. That's kind of cool.
Then I'm missing where you how does the logo appear?
What do you mean appear?
Because how does it like show up? Because mine.
Yes. So I expanded the group and then clicked on the circle. And then I clicked the fill and I changed it to a different color. Make sure that your logo group is on top of your image group, because with the layers, the ones on top will be on top of your design. And then as you go down, it will be put underneath.
So you click logo, or you click that and then.
I clicked logo to expand, clicked ellipse 1, and then the fill box to change it. Yeah. Sure. All right. We good to move on to a new screen? You think we got this down? All right, so the next screen that we're going to create is a login screen. So after the first screen is loaded, the app is loaded, I want people to click login or register, or if they want to just order some coffee as a guest account. There's a couple ways that you can just easily add some new frames. You can go back to the typical frame, add an iPhone 14 Pro. But if you want things to be a little bit simpler, you can copy paste your whole frame. So if you click the loading screen title, or if you click the frame in your layers panel, you can Control C and then Control V to copy paste. That's one option. Another would be if you have it selected and you Command D, it duplicates. The nice thing about this is if you're going to duplicate multiple things in a row, I can keep clicking Command D and it's going to add them equally spaced as it moved. So if I, like, for example, I don't need all of these. So if I were to duplicate it, but then move it down a little bit, and I Command D again, it's going to keep moving it that same distance. My personal favorite way of doing it is if you hold down the Option key on your keyboard, or it's Alt if you're using a PC, and then you click on the title, you can drag it to duplicate it. So that way you can still kind of place it wherever you want with one fluid motion. You'll notice that it did copy the name loading screen though. So this is going to be a new screen. You can just double click in the title of either to change it. I'm going to call this like launch screen or something. And if I expand, you'll see that it also did copy my logo group. It copied my image group. I still got everything there. So now how I'm envisioning this, I've kind of planned this out, did some, thinking. I want the logo, once this app is loaded, I want it to move up. And then I want there to be buttons below where you can click log in or register or something like that. So you can obviously click the logo circle and you can just move it like you normally would. You can use the up and down arrows on your keyboard. If you want, when you use those, it only moves it by 1 pixel at a time. So if you wanted to do very minute changes, but if you hold down Shift and do that, it's going to do it by 10. So if you want things to move it a little quicker, but it's still a little structured and not freeform, you can do that. And then now we're going to do some buttons. Buttons are kind of whatever shape you want them to be. Standard is a rectangle. So I'm going to go and click on this third tool. It might still be a circle for you, and then click rectangle. And I'm just going to automatically do it in here, just a size that you like. And it's automatically added to my launch screen frame. And then I'm still going to change that color just to make sure it shows. I'm going to use the align horizontal centers just to make sure it's perfectly centered within the frame. Now with wireframing, the text isn't super important. You're not supposed to know what the text is going to be. Honestly, when you're doing a wireframe, the copywriters, the app writers might know what it's going to be yet. But if you have some idea, I like to include it just so you know, like this is going to be the login button. This is going to be the menu or something like that. So I'm going to do the type tool again, place it on top, and I know that I want this to be a login button. And then when I click out of it, it'll select the whole text box. So after I typed login, it's a little small. After I type login, you'll see that the cursor is still within your text box. But when you click outside of it, it'll just select the text box as a whole. So you can apply any settings to that. And then I'm going to command and then click on my rectangle to select both. I'm going to use my align horizontal centers and my align vertical centers to make sure that the text is perfectly centered within my rectangle. And then I'm going to command G again to group it. And then rename it login button. If you want to name it something other than login, that's fine. Generally, like UX best practices, there's like 10 usability like heuristics is what it's called. The second one is matches system, like real world matches the system. So that's like, if the button is going to bring you to a login page, it should be called login. You can name it whatever you want, but it's going to make the user experience really hard because we're used to apps that say login or say register or create account or something like that. So don't stray too far from the norm, but if you want to make things unique, go for it.
How come Zoom doesn't require a login? And I think that's why people like it a lot, because it's just so easy, directly goes to where you need it to go.
Yeah, but with a lot of different, like for Starbucks, for example, because we're going to build a coffee shop app, you want to have a profile because then you can get rewards and stuff like that. But you do have to create an account and log in. This is going to be for like the whole process. Obviously I have the Starbucks app on my phone. I'm logged in. When I click it, it automatically launches the homepage. But there was a point in my user journey through that Starbucks app where I did have to log in. So most things that require an account are going to have, in fact, everything that requires account is going to have a login or a register at some point. But in reality, you'll get to a point where you're automatically signed in already, and then users don't see the screen every time. All right, so I'm going to select that group, and I'm going to do my nifty option click and drag, or Alt if you're on PC, to duplicate it. You'll notice these numbers, they're kind of maybe small on the screen, but that appear between the buttons. That's the pixels between them. So as you're working through things, if you want things to be pretty standard, I want everything to be 25 pixels apart. I can click and drag until it's 25. And then when I release, it'll place it. And then you can double click in, double click again to get into the text box. And I'm going to change this to say register. And you'll notice it automatically changed my layer name. Before it said login, but when I changed the text, it says register. That only happens with text layers. It won't change, a rectangle to a circle or something like that. And you'll notice if I use my align horizontal, align vertical buttons again, it'll center it, but it only does it within that button. And that's because I have this element, this text, within a group. So it's centering within the group. But when I have a logo, the whole group, and I do it, it's going to center it within the frame because it's nested directly under my frame. So when you're using those buttons, just be aware that it's going to do the centering based on whatever the element above it is. And I'm going to do the option click and drag again to do another one. You'll notice both of them say 25 now. So I know that it's, again, 25 pixels apart. And I'm going to double click twice to get into my text box. Use continue as guest. And then when I click out, it'll select my text box and I can use my centering options again. Any questions?
So, if I want to move the whole circle, including the
Yeah.
do I just click option? No, how do I move up? What move the letter as it is?
Yeah, so I have them grouped. So I have my text element and my circle grouped together. So when I select the first thing, it'll select my group. Or if I select the group in the layers, and then when I move it, it moves together. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, so I clicked on the login button and then I held down the option key. And then when I clicked and dragged, you can move it. And I just dragged it to where it said 25. And then I did the same thing again for register to continue as guest. All right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, I put them in the same group, but then the logging, the letter just won't move with me. Yeah. Then I register a group with some group. And then it doesn't move with you.
So click out here. You have to do so. So then just click and drag.
No, like I want logging to be here.
Yeah, so if you double click in, you have the text box selected,
Oh,
and then you just have to move it. but then make sure that it's above the rectangle.
Oh.
Because then that makes sure that it's shown above the rectangle.
They didn't really give me 25. I tried to use mine. Is there a way I can put 25 somewhere? Like,
So what you could do is if you click on login and just go up.
up.
So this is on the y-axis,
Mhm.
and then this is what follows.
Mhm.
So when you add those two numbers together, that'll be where this ends.
No, I want it to be 25 in between.
I know.
That's what you said. Oh,
But if you can't get it 25 this way, you have to do some math.
oh.
Yeah. So when you add the y,
Mhm.
which is where this top part is, when you add the height, that'll tell you the position of the box. And then when you go click on register, you would just put that number plus 25 in the box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What was that? So, as we move together, if you can drag the rectangle into your group. And then when you click in, just if you select everything to the right, then you put down alt and you click on drag. No, duplicate. So I'm going to choose this one. Yeah, so just double click in there and then double click again. You have to double click. Or you can I don't know if there's but if you and then you can also just expand this. Then you can
Please, no.
Mhm.
Like, once I created it wouldn't. It's not gonna. It doesn't. Like, and then I also put the letter on the top, like this one. And then I put the. Yeah, and the one I move it won't move with me. So what?
So you click out,
Oh,
maybe
I have
select it,
that this one, and then.
and then when you click in, it's gonna move it over.
Oh, I have to click out first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because you probably have just the text box selected or just the rectangle within the group, so when you're clicking and moving, it will be the group. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is I envisioned when I click login or register that a pop-up comes up. So instead of just taking me to another screen, it's going to be something where there's a smaller part on top of this pre-existing screen. Sounds a little confusing, might only make sense in week 3, I'll be honest. But how I can do that is I'll want another frame. So again, you can click Alt or Option and click and drag your whole frame by clicking that title. Or, in this case, I would probably just create a new frame through this way because I'm going to change this size. And I'm going to double click within it and name it Login. And this one is going to be a little bit more important to have those columns because we're going to do things that are not centered anymore. So I didn't have this applied. So when I click on the frame, or I can click on this over here, under layout grid, there's that 4 button thing that's style. And you'll see that I saved that style before. So when I click it, it automatically applies it with all the same settings, all the same properties.
So when you create the login, do you How do you create the one that's one?
Yeah, so you'll click on the frame, and then you can either choose a preset, or you can click and drag to create a custom size. Cool. So now I want there to be a header that says login. I want people to know what they're doing when they're entering things in. Like when I'm asking them for an email and a password, they should know why they're entering that information in. So I'm going to click on the text tool. You can also type T on your keyboard. And then I'm going to click just wherever you want.
For the preset, if you click the.
So I click frame
Mhm.
or click F, and then you can just click one, and then it'll add it for you. Because I typed nothing, my text thing went away. If you put a text thing there and then you don't type anything, it does go away. I'm just gonna type login. Again, generally, like styling isn't huge in wireframing, but because I know this is going to be a header, I know it's going to be bigger. I'm just going to change that right now, just so there's some visual differentiation and I don't have this really small word logo when I'm looking at this. So there's a couple options that of how you can change the size. So right here, there's this 12. You can just double click in. If I know that I want it to be 40, I can just type 40 and press enter and it'll change it. You can also click the drop down to see the selections that they have. They don't have every single number, but they have some pretty standard ones. Click on the text box and then you can drag to move it. And then another kind of cool way that's a little finicky though, is if you hover over the left side of the entry, you'll get this icon that's like 2 arrows. And if you click and drag to the left, it'll make it smaller. But if you drag to the right, it'll make it bigger. So you can see it kind of visually change before you select a number. And then I'm just going to click and drag it. I'm going to align it with the margin. So you notice when I do that, I see that red line. Just a note, like iPhone 14 Pros have that little lip at the top where it's like black. So just be mindful that that does not include this in the design. That's probably going to be like right here. So try not to put anything right there. Otherwise it will get cut off. So I'm just going to arrange it there. And then we're going to do the same thing for the username and the password headings. What I'm going to just do is, again, I'm just going to click Option or Alt, click and drag. It'll do the same thing, create a duplicate. It automatically has the text box selected. I know that I want this, let's say, to be 35 pixels now. So I'm going to put in 35. I know that this is going to say username, so I'm going to put in the word username. And I'm going to do the same thing, Alt and Option, click and drag, create a new one, give it some space because we're going to have like a text entry in there for someone to actually put their username in. And then I'm just going to double click within it to edit the text and do password. So now I want there to be some sort of designation that I'm going to be creating a text entry field. I'm going to create a space where people are actually putting in their username, they're actually putting in their password, something like that. How you do that in a wireframe to signify that is, again, our handy dandy rectangle. You can just create it. I'm going to create mine the width of my margins. So I'm not going to go beyond and into my 16 pixel margins on either side, but I'm going to make sure that they're spanning all of that red. And then I'm going to use my type tool again. And usually in just UX design stuff, if you have a text entry, you'll notice that with, if I were to just quickly go back to my files, I'm supposed to be doing something here, and it directly tells me in the text, search files, search team, search people. That's pretty standard to have an entry field, and then within it, it's saying enter password, enter username. So I gotta find it because I skipped a step. We'll get to it. So I'm gonna type in here. I'm gonna do enter username. And then I'm gonna click outside of my text box to make sure that the entire text box is selected before I go and I change my font size. I'm just gonna make it 20. And I space barred plus right there to zoom in. You can space bar minus to zoom out. And I'm just going to place this somewhere centered, not fully to the side of the text box, so it doesn't get cut off by like a border that I create later or something like that. And I've made you make so many groups so far. I'm going to make you do it again. So select the text, shift select the rectangle to select both. You can command select as well. And then command G to group it. And I'm just going to rename it like username text entry. And I keep on making you do Alt Option, click and drag to duplicate. We're going to do it again. And I'm just going to try to space it. You'll notice that it's a little bit easier for me than some of you who are using a trackpad because I have a full-on mouse. But you'll notice that it has those 25 pixels between the text and where I'm placing my box. That just makes sure that I'm putting it in a standard position. And then if I double click to enter the group, double click to enter my text box, I can just change username to say password.
Text resizing, like arrow thing.
Yeah, for sure. So if you highlight a text box, and then if you kind of hover over the left border of that, and then you can click and drag it. Oh yeah. I think in like Illustrator and Photoshop, you hover over the number and you do it, but for some reason it's the border in Figma. And not even the right border, which I think would make more sense. But
When I move the box, the username like title moves with the,
did you group them all together? Let me take a look.
maybe, okay, that's my bad. I should move this and then I'll change to like in the username. No, yeah. Okay.
All right, and because I know that I want this to be like an overlay, it's going to be a pop-up. I know I don't want it to be the full size of the screen. I'm going to resize my frame also because there's so much white space anyways. So if I were to click the whole frame, by clicking login, you can also click it over here. You can just resize by clicking and dragging the border. I'm clicking the bottom border because if I accidentally move my mouse to the left or to the right, it doesn't resize the width. If I were to click the corner, it does both. And if I were to click the left side, it only does the width, but not the height. Something like that. This is just kind of design preference of where you want it to be. Now you'll notice I said that I skipped something before on accident. Because when I went back to my files, I was like, okay, where did it go? What is it? I didn't name my file, which is kind of crucial to actually find it. So you'll see up here, it says untitled. If you just double click within there, you can change your file name. So I'm just going to name this Figma workshop. But you can name it whatever you want.
The page, like where the page is.
So this is your whole file name. So when I went back to my files to try to find it when I was showing the text box, I couldn't find it because it was called untitled. But if you
Oh.
Mhm.
That's cool.
double click the untitled or the thing.
I don't have that one. I have the three items.
You want to do select?
Mhm.
Now I would probably also create one for like register as a page, as a separate thing if someone hasn't already created an account. We're not going to do that because it's basically the same thing that we just did. Creating a frame, putting text, creating text entry boxes, stuff like that. Again, if you wanted to like see your design without these columns, if you click the frame and then you just click this eye icon by your style, it'll actually turn off every instance of it. If you didn't create the grid style or you didn't apply it to a specific one, it'll just be individuals. But if you wanted to look at what it's looking like, it looks pretty boring, but all right. So now I'm going to create a navigation menu. Because if you have an app and you want people to use it, they need to get around. And you can't just rely on buttons on screens. You know, if I was just relying on login, register, continue as guest, putting buttons on there, but you were to navigate to like a page 7 pages deep, and then, you know, how do you get back to something without clicking back so many times and remembering what page the button you needed was on? So we're going to create a navigation menu. I'm going to do the option Alt click and drag the launch screen because the next thing that we're going to build is a full screen again. Oh, I didn't hold down Alt. And then I'm just going to delete these elements because it's not the frame. And you just click them and you click delete or backspace or whatever on your computer. But essentially, I just wanted a new frame, and I'm going to call this home page.
How can you delete the gray rectangle because it's the same size as the frame?
Yeah, so you double click into it. So, or you could do, if you open up the frame and then, oh, it's not on that one, sorry. If you open it up and you can like get to the image group and select that one individually and then press delete and it'll get rid of it. All right. So navigation menus in web design are normally on the top. Navigation menus in mobile apps are normally on the bottom because your fingers are closest to the bottom of the screen, and that's where you're going to click to navigate. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And remember, if you hold spacebar and you click and drag, you can pan through your canvas to see it easier. And I'm going to create a rectangle that is the whole width of my my frame. If you knew specifically how many pixels you wanted it to be, you could go up in here and change it. And again, they have that fancy slider thing. This one will be over the actual letter. So like for height, it's over the H. For width, it's over the W. But I'm just going to do 393 for the width, which is the full width. And then I'm going to do 60, let's say. And just drag it down so it's on the bottom. So now I did some planning of the different screens that I want people to navigate to via my menu. I know I want there to be a home icon, an icon to view the locations of the different shops, maybe a cart, a menu, a like get help page, stuff like that. So I know I need 6 icons, let's say. Icons are very similar to logos with wireframes. It's the shape of what it's going to be and then a text that says icon. Very innovative. So if I click rectangle, and I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm going to hold down shift so it's a perfect square. I'm going to create it a little bit bigger, so like 40. And I'm going to release. And I'm immediately going to change my fill color by going over here to fill, clicking that gray box and making it a little bit darker just so I can see it. Click the X. And then I'm going to click the T again, or press T on your keyboard to create some text. And we're going to do icon. I'm going to click out to select the full text box. And then I'm shift clicking. You can also command or control click to select the square. And I'm doing that align horizontal center, align vertical center thing again, so that the text icon is perfectly centered within my square. They're still both selected for me. You may be clicked out or something, but if you select them both, we're going to group it again. Command G, Control G, or File, Object, Group Selection. I'm going to rename it icon. And then I'm going to option click and drag some more to create some more icons. Now I know I need 6, which is going to be a little hard to like manually put them into a perfect place. So I'm going to show you some tricks of how you can make it perfectly spaced between 6, which I find really helpful. So no matter, just create 6, option click and drag, doesn't matter how great they are placed. I'm placing mine a little funny so that you can see how things work.
Did you move the icon and the rectangle?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Icon as a small.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I grouped the icon text and the square. just so that when I'm duplicating it or when I'm moving it, they're all moving together.
Can you please show again like how you make the text in the middle, because the text
Yeah.
kind of like lines.
So if I'm just going to move this one kind of funny. But if you select both the text and the rectangle, and then there's this align horizontal centers, and then the align vertical centers.
And then on
Mhm.
you. Duplicate them.
Yeah, so I selected the group and then I held down Option or Alt on my keyboard, and then I clicked and I dragged it so that I can just keep duplicating. You're welcome.
This is for the engineers to know like how to build it from here, right?
So this is a wireframe, which is basically before there's any like official designs or development on it. It's just to like get everyone on the team who's building the app or the website or something to approve it, to be like, yes, I like this structure. Yes, I like how things are organized in it, before we start adding all these fun text and colors, so that it gets confusing or something.
Can I hand draw it?
You can hand draw and then import things in too, if you want. All right. So now here comes the fun part, and I'll do this one a little slow because it can be a little tricky. So I am going to move this leftmost icon, make sure it's against my margin. So I'm seeing that vertical red line up and down by my margin. I want to make sure it's there. I'm also centering it in this one, but you don't have to. You're going to do the same for the one on the right, but you're going to push it to the rightmost margin. If you want to center it, you can. It looks really fun when there's a bunch of red lines and you know things are lining up, but now with your left one on the most left and your right one on the most right, if you select them all, so you can either click on your layer, hold Shift, and then click all the way down to select them all at once. You can hold Shift and click them individually in your canvas. You can hold down Control or Command and do the same thing. But easiest way is select one on the most top, hold down Shift, and then select the one on the bottom of your layers, and it selects everything in between. Now I'm going to distribute, or I'm going to align my vertical centers to make sure they're all on that same line. But I still have that huge gap at the very right. And this isn't a beautiful navigation menu yet. But if you click on these three bars right here, you'll get some more options. There's tidy up, distribute vertical spacing, and distribute horizontal spacing. Tidy up kind of tries to do its best. It's like an AI thing. I find it sometimes helpful. I generally just click directly into this, so I'm controlling it instead of a computer that sometimes messes it up. Like if you've ever used content aware fill in Photoshop and or like select subject and it's very off. So if I click distribute horizontal spacing, it makes sure that there's equal spacing between each of the things that I selected. If you're going to do things vertically, distribute vertical spacing would do the same thing, but the other way. So now I know that I'm going to put this navigation menu on a ton of my screens. I'm going to be duplicating it. So I'm going to create an even bigger group by selecting all of those elements, the rectangle and all those 6 icons. Command G, or Control G, you'll see it automatically squishes it all down, which is pretty nice. And then I'm going to name it navigation menu. So now with my home page, I might not know what text is going to be here yet. You know, those standard things like login and register, pretty standard. But maybe we want a home page that shows our new product at some point. Maybe we want a home page that, you know, shows that we opened a new location or that we're doing a new like social campaign or something like that. So if you want to put text in there that you don't know what it's going to be, it's not going to be standard, that's just going to be a simple rectangle. And so if you click a rectangle and you can just put it however big you think the text will be and click and release. If you know that there's going to be body text, so like a paragraph or multiple lines, how that would look is if you have multiple like thin rectangles put together. So if I do one thin rectangle, I'm going to Option click and drag to duplicate. And then from there, I'm actually going to Command D, because then it's automatically going to duplicate the same distance that I moved the first one down. And then if I click them all, be wary that don't try to group your header, but click the 4 that I did. You can do 3 or 4 is pretty standard. And Command G, I'm just going to name this body text. So now let's say I've decided I know that I want things to appear in my homepage as little cards or like little sections where there's seemingly a container for each individual story that I'm posting. I'm going to put a rectangle that spans the width of my my screen, but not the margins. You'll notice that my 4 text box thing went away. That's because I created a new object and placed it on top of it. So if I want that to show on top, I would go over here to my layers panel, select it, and I'd click and drag and move it up to be above the rectangle that I just created. Can't see it because the color's not there, but if I were to make it darker, you can start seeing it. So I'm going to have some text. It's actually, I'm going to expand it to be a little bit longer. Maybe squish it. This is just me designing. This is not something crazy. You can center it or something. Mm-hmm.
So body type is supposed to out on the.
Yeah, this is just like the way that I'm designing it. As you create different things, feel free to play around with how you want things to show up. But this is just what I thought of.
Yeah, I just can't make that thing this
So if you go over here, the ones on on top. And then these will be down, down, and layers. So if your body text one is underneath that rectangle, it's not going to show up. But if you click and drag it above it, it should show up. It might be the same color as the rectangle. When you create shapes, Figma defaults to the same gray every time.
Think, and then you take rectangle. Okay, how do I take rectangle? Oh my gosh.
You could, if you need to remove it, you can select it and click and drag it off your frame, or you can delete it.
Okay, I think that.
And I know that I'm gonna have an image here too. It's pretty standard to when you post news stories to have like an image, a header image, a featured image or something like that. You can click and drag your image wireframe and option click and drag so you create the duplicate. And then I'm just gonna resize it manually so that it's within my card. And you can play around with making things lighter or darker just to make sure that you can see how they do. And I did not leave enough room on the bottom, so I'm going to expand it a little bit. And then usually also with stuff, there's what's called a call to action or a CTA. So that's usually a link that you're supposed to click to go somewhere. In this case, it'll be a button. You know, if I'm introducing a new location for this coffee shop, I maybe want something that says order from here. Like I'm trying to get people to order from the new shop or like check it out or something. But I don't know what I'm going to name it yet. Like we had login, register, continue as guest before. So we do the same thing, create a rectangle and put text in there that says button to create a generic button that we don't know what it's going to be called yet.
Did you create another rectangle?
Yes.
The two lines.
Oh, I'm just going to change the color so that you can see kind of what's happening. We're seeing a layout happening, a design. I'm just going to align it centered using align horizontal centers. And then I'm going to put my text box in there and just say button. And I'm selecting both my button text and my rectangle. And I'm going to align them again so that button's in the middle. You're probably sick of me saying group it, but I'm going to group it. And name this button. Now I know I'm probably going to have multiple different of these cards on my home screen at a time. I'm not just going to be featuring one story. So I'm going to select everything, my image, my body text, my button group, and this container rectangle. Command G, Control G to group that whole thing. And I might name this like news card. And then I'm option click and dragging to just show that I'm going to have multiple. I'm going to see more. So if you were to, if you hold, like click the group and you control, no, if you, I don't remember what it is. So it's command back, but Figma object ungroup selection is also. All right, we're gonna do one more screen together. This is gonna be a drink item. We want people to be able to order drinks from our coffee shop. And so the reason we're gonna do this one is gonna show some additional options that you can use for wireframing elements. So I'm gonna actually just duplicate my login screen because again, I've planned this to be an overlay, like a pop-up that happens when you click the drink in the menu. So option, click and drag. I'm gonna rename this drink item. And the nice thing is we've already created a bunch of wireframe elements already. We've created the image, we've created a logo, we've created body text, generic text, buttons. So all you have to do now, I'm gonna just delete the content, but you can just do that same Alt/Option, click and drag to duplicate things and arrange them on your new screen. So maybe I want, if I click in here and I get my image, click option and drag, and I see that it's here. Maybe I want the image of the coffee up here, and then like the name of it underneath. I'm going to option click and drag the username text because I know that I'm going to want people to choose a size. I know that for a fact. So why not say size? If you don't want to, you can just use the generic rectangle as well. For size, I'm gonna do buttons. So you can pick a small. And you'll notice that when I rearranged my button rectangle too small, it had to wrap the text because the text box was too small, but you can rearrange that as well by clicking on the text box and then changing its borders. So I'm just going to align those again. And I'm just option click and dragging and then Command D for duplicating. You can start arranging. These buttons are a little big, but that's fine.
When you create the new drink item, did you duplicate the previous page or?
Yeah, I duplicated the login page. Just because I maybe know I want it to be a similar size or something like that. I'm option clicking, dragging the size because I want people to be able to like do add-ins. With Starbucks, you can say I want to add caramel syrup or I want to, add whipped cream or, no whipped cream or something. So I'm going to put the same kind of header, add-ins, and then we're going to create a drop-down menu. So for a wireframe, this is going to appear pretty basic. And It's another rectangle. But this time, the rectangle needs to have an indicator that you can click it and there's going to be options that come. And that's through a like upside down triangle. So under the rectangle tool, you have the polygon tool. And by default, it's going to pick up a triangle. But you'll notice when I create my triangle, if I hold shift, it's going to make it, I don't remember my triangle sizes, or like geometry was so long ago, but it'll make sure that it's pretty even. But if you wanted it to have different sides, that's what this setting is for right here. There's a diamond with 4 dots. And this is if you wanted to make, 7 sides for a shape. And you can also click and drag the slider. It's pretty fun to look at. Notice also that there is this setting. It looks kind of like in geometry when you put like the little arc in the corner of a triangle. This is the rotation. And so you can either click and drag to change the rotation, or you can put in a number. 180 just flips it. So rotation is based on a circle. And so if you want it to go completely opposite to where it is now, you do 180. I'm going to put it over on this right side. It's a little hard to see right now. But then I'm going to change the fill so that you can. I'm just going to arrange it somewhere. It just needs to be on there. Yep, that'll be with the rotation setting, and you'll put it to 180 because that flips it perfectly. And then I'm going to need some sort of indicator of a price. That's also just a text thing. So I'm duplicating my header. I'm just going to rearrange it to a smaller and put it somewhere like right here. And then I know that I'm going to have another button. These aren't grouped, but I'll take this one. I'm just going to align it with that. You'll notice that these red lines always pop up when you're trying to place things. It's just trying to help you align it to something else. So in this case, I'm seeing it's aligning itself with not only my price text box that's right above it, but also the left side of my triangle. I really only care about the right side of my price box. And then I can just change this to add to cart because I know that this is going to be what it's called or something. And then just centering it. And I probably should have done all of that before I added the text. All right, so we're seeing just a little bit of a design coming through. We don't have a ton of screens, but we're getting to know the basics with Figma right now. We don't have too much time left, so I wanted to pause for any last questions.
How do you put in the text at the bottom and the triangle? Is there a group I can separate them there?
Yeah, so if they're grouped, you can still access them individually. So like with this button, for example, like this whole card is grouped. So if I click into it once, it selects the whole group. But then if I double click above on the image, it's going to go within the group and find the element that you're clicking on. And you could keep going and I could select just the line or so on and so forth, and then duplicate it from there.
So you talked about like margins and industry standards.
Mhm.
Would there be any source that comes to mind when you look at in order to like get a little bit into that?
That's a great question. It's material.io is a pretty good one. So this is from Google themselves. And this is a pretty standard design source. It'll explain everything from, best practices for web design, mobile design, best practices for developing it. If you click get started and then design, there's all of these different things. Oh, look, they even have a Figma design kit. That's awesome. But it'll have all of these different articles on what their best practices for these different design things are. Cool. So next week, we're going to go over some more of the design stuff, adding colors and images and text, making it more of an actual mock-up of what you'd see on the screen and not just this bare bones, pre-structure. It automatically saves.
Okay, so I can just go back to it.
Yep. So you can just go back to your files. You can click out of the tab, do whatever you need.
Just a personal question. I still cannot draw lines. They disappear every time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's just the indicator of we're going to put an image there.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.